The lights in Bedford County Court hum when my father says clear enough for the back row. She wasted her life, never held a real job. The words skim across the benches and land between my ribs. The judge takes off his wire rims, rubs the bridge of his nose, and looks at him. Sir, he says, calm and clipped, your daughter was a SEAL operative for 12 years. Nobody breathes. Aunt Luann's hymnal slips to the floor. Kyle stares like he misheard. I fold my hands and count 4 and 6 out. Sunlight angles through the high windows and turns the dust to snow. 2 weeks earlier, I was on the back steps of my duplex scraping a wobbly kitchen chair I promised Mrs. Dottie I'd fix. Late August smelled like cut grass and hot tar from an asphalt crew up the block. The high school band worked out Louie Louie past the Maples. In Bedford, Virginia, you learn a place by sound. A manila envelope from a Lynchburg law office lay beside my coffee. I'd opened it at the post office under a yellowed change of address poster. Probate hearing, motion to expedite sale of my mother's house. Petitioner Earl Morgan, my father of Morgan Heating and Air. He wanted to sell the place. Mom and I kept going the peonies in May, the hymnals on the piano on the ground that I never contributed. I ran the scraper until a strip of paint lifted like sunburn. The chair legs were sturdy. I slid the envelope into the middle slot of my metal sorter gas bill coupon circulars. Return addresses that never say where they're from. The freight train rolled through and shook the window. I like that sound. Something is moving. Saturday, I hauled pound cakes from Aunt Luann's Buick to the church table at the farmer's market. Smile, Rebecca, she said, old habit. Folks asked the polite questions. What are you up to these days? Still doing odd jobs, I kept it soft. Here and there, no sense lighting a match. Dad slid his van into a spot like a drawer slammed shut. Kyle's closing on a condo in Roanoke, he announced. Real work, real money. He clapped my shoulder. You thinking about something steady yet? Morning to you too, Earl, Aunt Luann said, smoothing the air. I stacked cakes and looked at the courthouse steps. I know where the security line starts and when the clerk takes lunch. Some knowledge isn't in brochures. Janine called while I rinsed paintbrushes. Saw the motion, she said. We'll contest. If the judge allows an in-camera review, he can see what he needs without putting it on the record. In camera, I repeated. Keeps Dad from running a fish fry on the steps. Exactly. Do you have the mortgage allotment records? I do, I said. And the other thing? We won't use the other thing unless we must, she said. You've carried it long enough. After we hung up, I slid out the false bottom in my screwdriver drawer and lifted 3 items of folded letter with a trident embossed at the top. A stack of pay stubs with black rectangles where the good parts used to be. A photo of Mom at the Christmas program, mouth open, mid-alto eyes closed like prayer. I put the letter and stubs into a plain folder and left the photo face down. Sunday. I walked my loop past the VFW. Flags on the lawn were frayed at the tips. Men sat in plastic chairs, talking low. He's pushing to sell Elaine's place, one said. Lord. Another replied, he'll get more if he paints the porch. It landed dull. Mom's porch doesn't need paint. It needs her laugh through the screen. At the clerk's window, I signed where Janine flagged with neon tabs and slid over the sealed envelope. The clerk, my age silver cross on a chain, didn't look at the contents. Certified copy. On, I said. Paper moves heavier when it matters. My shoulders dropped when the copy hit the folder. The body keeps score even when the head says we're fine. That night, I idled in Mom's driveway to check the porch light. The peony bed was only green now, but if you know where to look, you can see the little nubs where next May hides. The piano sat where it always sat. I left the hymnals stacked with paper clips marking How Great Thou Art and Precious Lord. I told her out loud I'd go to court Friday. I said I wasn't angry so much as worn thin. I said I'd try to keep it decent. Friday. I wore a navy dress that doesn't wrinkle and flats I can stand in all day. I didn't put on anything that might start a conversation. The line at the metal detector curled to the stairs. When it was my turn, I set my folder in the tray and stepped through. The deputy nodded. I nodded back. Dad was leaning against paneled wood, telling a story to Kyle and 2 shop guys. She's been drifting, he said. Good heart, no plan. He lifted his chin when he saw me. I took the back row, the seat you pick when you want the full view. The bench was glassy smooth from 100 years of people. I counted breaths, not to calm down, just to mark time. The bailiff called our case. The judge looked younger up close than in the paper, but his eyes were used eyes that have heard every kind of lie and every kind of love. He ran through preliminaries. Janine answered clean. Dad's attorney began about financial contributions and lack of employment history. Then Dad said the line he's rehearsed for years, this time into a microphone. She wasted her life, never held a real job. It hit the same spot and for once didn't stay. The judge set his glasses on the bench. The room clicked smaller. Sir, he said, your daughter was a SEAL operative for 12 years. Everyone finally heard what I'd chosen not to say. People think secrets look like car chases. Mostly they look like groceries paid in cash and a drawer you keep shut. On ordinary Tuesdays, I get up before the traffic on Independence Boulevard, boil water in a dented kettle, and wind paracord back into a neat figure 8 because messy cord puts me on edge. There's a scar the size of a lima bean under my collarbone. I don't tell a story about it. I press my thumb there when the weather changes and go on with my day. My duplex is the kind you stop seeing when you've lived in town, long enough, 2 doors, 2 porches, a shared patch of crabgrass that browns in August. The mailbox squeaks like a hinge in a horror movie. Inside the kitchen drawer with the rubber bands, I keep a second, shallower drawer that slides out if you tug the right way. It holds a plain envelope with a raised trident at the top, a stack of pay stubs spit out by a government printer that eats its own tail, and a hand-scribbled list I once made of loadouts for a person who does not officially exist. When I open the drawer, I breathe the way they taught us in On 4 Out on 6. It is not mystic. It is plumbing for the lungs. Mrs. Dottie Landry from next door knocks by tapping her rings against the screen frame. That chair done? Yet, Rebecca, she asks, looking past me like the chair might jump into her arms if she stares hard enough. 10 minutes, I tell her. The glue has to set. She leans on the cane she doesn't use in public. You were gone a lot when your mama was alive, she says, not accusing, just remembering out loud. Cards came from San Diego. Once from Virginia Beach. I figured cruise ships. Something like that, I say, because it satisfies, without lying. She pats my forearm. Well, you always come back polite, she says, which is her way of blessing me, whether she means to or not. At the Food Lion, I stand under the hum of the cold cases and decide between whole milk and 2% like a person with a very ordinary life. The young cashier with a nose stud asks if I want to round up for the animal shelter. I say yes. I always say yes when it's under $1. My cart holds coffee bleach paper towels and a box of Little Debbie oatmeal pies because Mom used to split one with me after choir practice. I leave through the side door and habit check the parking lot. 2 exits, a cart boy smoking behind the ice machine, a man in a contractor's truck scrolling his phone with his mouth open. The habits don't switch off just because the job does. Back at the duplex, I set the chair on the porch for Dottie and heat a bowl of chili. The spoon clinks the side in a rhythm that makes the room feel steady. My phone vibrates against the counter. Janine. Judge approved an in-camera packet, she says. He'll review the verification privately before the hearing. It keeps it clean. What language is he going to see? I ask. She reads careful. Assigned to Naval Special Warfare. In an operational capacity, multiple periods, commendations, withheld records, sealed pursuant to statute. It's not spicy, Beck, but it's enough. The word operative never lives on the paper, I say. Judges translate for the room, Janine says. He'll say what people can hear. There's a kindness in that, even if it's blunt as a hammer. After we hang up, I run a load of laundry and set the timer on the dryer. I don't like clothes sitting limp in there, taking the shape of the drum. While the dryer thumps, I go through the checklist in my head the way a mechanic listens to an engine. Boxes tick, doors latch. The back fence line is where it should be. The porch light works on its first click. I can watch myself from the ceiling of my own house, and it doesn't scare me. There were years when my feet learned streets by their taste of salt and jet fuel. A room in Imperial Beach where the towel smelled like bleach and the air conditioner rumbled like a transport plane. A strip motel between Dam Neck and Little Creek, where the night clerk kept hard candies in a plastic bowl and called everybody Bud. Dawn PT that I didn't lead, but didn't lag either, with the kind of men who switch off their grins like light bulbs. My name didn't pass muster for the record books. That was fine. I was there to fit into edges. I learned the curl of rope and the patience of water. I learned what to say to a man who thinks he owns the room less than he expects. People ask if I was afraid. You are, and then you're busy. Afraid doesn't butter the toast or get you through a locked door. You listen to tires on gravel. You file the sound of a latch in your pocket. You carry a hotel phone book because a drop under the hinge will tell you if someone cracked your door while you were sleeping. It's a scavenger hunt, not a movie. The one time I told Mom anything straight, it was 2 a.m. at our kitchen table. She had taken off her choir shoes and tucked her feet up ladylike still, and the bread machine beeped from the counter. I said, if people knew what I did, they could use it to find you. She reached across, thumb gentle on my wrist where the watch tan used to be. Then I don't need to know, she said, and I won't ask your father to either. She meant it, not out of fear, out of order. She believed in letting work be work and home be home and not making a show out of either. Dad loves to make a show. He tells stories with the volume set to diner. He loves big nouns, real work, real money, real man. A secret would last inside him about as long as a quarter on a bar. It's not malice, it's physics. He was built to fill space and to be heard across it. Keeping him outside my circle wasn't punishment. It was a safety protocol that also kept him from being somebody's soft target. I could let him underestimate me if it meant nobody put a bead on him. There were men like Cal Whitaker at the VFW Old School, a nod where other folks would throw a parade. Once after a Memorial Day program, he looked at me over the punch bowl and said, "You stand like you're waiting for a second shot." He didn't ask another thing. Some people see and leave it alone. That was a kindness too. Romance people like to ask about that without using the word. There was a lined cook in Oceanside who made the best salsa I ever tasted and wanted to talk about Colorado. There was a school resource officer in Chesapeake who liked my quiet and thought it meant I needed saving. I broke both off with the same sentence, "I'm not in a good place for company." It sounds distant, but it's truer than a softer lie. I don't feel sorry about it. Not everybody needs to be walked home. If you're looking for action, here is some. I rotate my tires on the schedule. I can change a serpentine belt with a borrowed socket set. I keep quarters in an old medicine bottle for parking meters and laundromats, and a roll of crisp ones for tips. I file tax receipts in monthly envelopes and write thank you notes in pen. None of that is hero work. It's how you live through storms no one will ever see. When Janine first said the words mortgage allotment, I thought of the dull rhythm of those transfers, month after month, going out under one name and arriving under another like a ferry nobody notices. Mom's house was not grand. 2 bedrooms, pine floors that squeaked when you turned toward the pantry. But it sheltered more than our things. It sheltered the story we were not going to write down. My contributions went out the way they were supposed to, quiet on time without complaint. If Dad didn't recognize them as real, that was a failure of his imagination, not of the bank. I promised Mom I wouldn't run my life like a grievance. She said, "You can stand up without shouting." The first time I practiced that was at a base clinic when a clerk lost a file and tried to turn me into a problem. I put my elbows on the counter, kept my voice level, and said, "We'll wait together while you find it." He did. It changed my posture forever. 2 nights before the hearing, I took out the Trident letter and read the language Janine quoted. It was bare as a broom closet and twice as clean. I tucked it back. I made coffee and watched the steam slip past the lamp. In this town, people think proof looks like a uniform. Sometimes proof is a manila folder you don't wave in anyone's face. Sometimes proof is showing up on time and letting the right person read the right line once and then closing the file. On the morning of court, I swept my porch because a swept porch makes a person hard to dismiss. I put the repaired chair by Dottie's door, tied off with a strip of muslin. I locked my door, checked it once more, and went to stand where the floor hums and the flags don't move even when the air does. I was not brave that day. I was prepared. Those are cousins, but they're not the same. Janine's office sits above a State Farm agency and a screen print shop that smells like hot plastic and old lint. The stairwell is narrow enough that you have to turn your shoulder to pass anyone coming down. Her door is painted a sensible gray and sticks a little, if you don't lift, when you pull. Inside 2 file cabinets, a fake ficus diplomas in frames that don't match a coffee maker older than my car, and one of those glass bowls full of peppermints that taste like the bottom of a church purse. It is not fancy. It is orderly, and I trust orderly. She had the motion packet spread out like a child's fan on the desk. Neon tabs like tiny flags, each one with a number. Okay, she said, tapping each in turn. 1 house title history. 2 your mother's will. 3 mortgage statements. 4 proof of your allotments. 5 requests for in-camera review with the sealed verification. 6, I asked. 6 is the scholarship language, she said. Draft. We'll keep it soft. She slid a single sheet across. Elaine Morgan Choir. Scholarship, a paragraph about modest awards criteria that sounded like mom showing up on Wednesday nights, helping stack chairs, lending out a hymn book when someone forgot. We're not filing it with the court, Janine said. But I want it in my pocket if he asks about your intent. Intent is a word that makes a room feel smaller. I read the line about honoring community voices and swallowed around a lump I hadn't planned to carry up these stairs. It's right, I said. She sat back, spun her legal pad, and clicked a blue pen. Earl filed a motion to expedite the sale, she said. He's arguing you're a long-term guest without financial contribution. His attorney attached a spreadsheet that would make a preacher swear. We're going to unwind it with the allotment records and your mother's notes. Notes, I said. He found something of hers. I did, Janine said. She opened a manila folder and slid out a photocopy of the inside cover of a hymnal mom's handwriting, round and steady. Mortgage Beck's automatic help. Don't breathe a word to Earl. It will upset him. A paperclip shadow bisected the sentence like a quiet cross. I put my finger on the copy as if it might evaporate. For a second, the room tilted, and I felt the oak pew at Mount Olive under my nerve endings, the sweet dust of blessed assurance. Where was it, I asked. Church library, she said. Luann told me to look. Found it in a box of duplicates when they were purging the shelf of mold. It would be like mom to leave a breadcrumb in a songbook, I said. When you sing alto, you learn to hold the middle and trust the melody will find you. She trusted paper to hold what she wouldn't say to Dad. Janine turned the page back toward herself and squared it with the desk blotter. Listen to me for a second, she said. We are not going to make a circus. We're going to make a record. That's different. The judge is the audience, not the benches. I understand, I said. I don't want a parade. Good, she said, and clicked the pen closed. Because your father likes parades. We filed the in-camera packet with the clerk. The sealed envelope had that raised trident at the top and language that read like a locked door assigned in an operational capacity. Record sealed pursuant to statute. The clerk stamped the outside neat as a nurse and didn't ask a single question beyond certified copies. It felt like reading a prayer in a language only one person in the room speaks. You say the words anyway, trusting they will go where they need to go. Outside the clerk's window is a corridor lined with portraits, judges in black robes, farmers turned county commissioners, a sheriff with a mustache you could hang a coat on. The seal at the end of the hall has been touched until the eagle's feathers are smooth as river stones. Janine and I sat on a wooden bench beneath a photograph of the courthouse from 1908 and went through the mortgage statements with a ruler and a yellow highlighter. ACH, transfer DFAS marching out in steady lines. Paper is just paper until you put your life in the margins. I told Janine about Dad's van, about his habit of speaking at diner volume and making real man noises when a bill is heavy in the hand. He'll grandstand, I said. He'll say I passed up steady work. He'll point at Kyle's condos like they're medals. And you will sit still, she said. If he wanders, I'll object. If he insults, I'll let him finish if it helps us. We won't poke the bear unless the bear blocks the road. Copy, I said, and she smiled like she heard something familiar in my cadence. On the square, we walked past Bunker Hill Diner, where somebody had burned bacon to a perfect black curl, and a man in a camo hat held a door too long for a woman who didn't want to be held for. In Bedford, chivalry and annoyance share the same air. I bought 2 coffees and handed one to Janine. "You know I'm not trying to win the town," I said. "We're not auditioning," she said. "We're proving. Judge reasonable, not TV." Back home, I stripped the bed and washed the sheets because that's what you do when you know you'll sleep hard. I vacuumed and found a penny under the couch leg. I put it in the medicine bottle with the quarters. That night, I took out Mom's hymnal copy and slid it into my folder behind the Trident letter. Then I put both into the shallow drawer, slid it shut, and stood there with my hand on the wood like you might on a headstone, not to wake anyone, just to say I'm here. The day before the hearing, Earl cornered me in the parking lot behind the AutoZone where I'd gone for wiper blades. He didn't touch me. He's not stupid. He did that thing where he plants his boots wider than his hips so he looks like a billboard. "You really want to drag your mother's name through court," he said, "over a house you don't even live in." "I want to do what she wrote down," I said. I didn't mention the hymnal. He looked at my hands, then at the wiper blades and huffed. "Real work looks like dirt under your nails," he said. "I've had my share," I said. "Different dirt." "Always these riddles," he muttered. "You and Luann with your secrets." He shook his head, more irritated than angry, like the world had refused to stay simple on his schedule. "You could make this easy on yourself, Beck." I said, and left it there. That evening, Aunt Luann stopped by with a Tupperware of baked spaghetti. She set it on the counter and wiped her hands on a dish towel she'd brought from home, pink tulips, cross-stitched, fraying at the edges. "If you change your mind about any of this, I'll love you the same," she said. "But I hope you don't change your mind." "I won't," I said. She kissed my cheek and went down the steps slow. I watched her taillights until they turned. Then I ate a square of spaghetti cold straight from the dish and drank water out of the measuring cup, because all my glasses were in the dishwasher. There is dignity in a fork and a quiet kitchen when you have a plan. The morning of the hearing dawned with that metallic taste summer gets when it's thinking about letting go. I put on the navy dress and the flats. I set the scholarship draft in the middle of my folder, because I wanted to see Mom's name when I opened it, not mine. In the mirror, I look like anyone you wouldn't notice. That's a kind of armor, too. At the courthouse, the security line moved in the slow accordions of government time. The bailiff nodded at Janine like they play softball in the same league. We sat on the back row. Dad came in with Kyle and 2 men from the shop, the kind who cross their arms even when they're sitting like a barricade. Janine leaned close. "Remember," she said, "we're here to make a record." The judge's clerk opened the side door and called the first case. Papers rustled like a flock settling. I rested my hand on the folder and felt the grit of the manila under my palm. Paper cuts sting, but they heal clean. The bailiff called our case next. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked forward into the part where proof stops being private. The bailiff calls our case, and the room resets. Papers straightened, knees uncrossed, a hush. Janine and I take counsel table. Dad sits 2 chairs over with his attorney Dalton, who looks bored, holding a legal pad. The judge reviews the docket like a mechanic listening to an engine before touching a tool. "Good morning," he says. "We're here on Mr. Morgan's motion to expedite sale of the residence and Ms. Morgan's opposition. I have also received a motion for in-camera review of sealed verification." His voice is even. Janine states our names. Dalton leans into the mic. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward equity matter. My client maintains a property the respondent neither lives in nor supports. There is no evidence of meaningful contribution by Ms. Morgan. We ask to proceed with the sale before the property deteriorates further." Janine stays seated. Respondent has provided DFAS records of automatic mortgage allotments over multiple years, consistent with the monthly note, she says. She also requested in-camera review of a service verification letter where public disclosure would raise safety concerns. We ask that the court deny the motion to expedite, maintain the status quo, and set an evidentiary hearing. Dalton flicks a page. The supposed allotments are opaque. They could be anything, and even then, de minimis. Ms. Morgan has no regular employment history. My client has been carrying this house on his back. The judge glances over his glasses. Exhibits. Janine slides the folder forward tabs, like tiny flags. The clerk brings it up. The judge lifts his wire rims, reads, sets them down, reads again. In the pause, the fluorescent hum shifts like the building breathing with us. Dalton senses space and gilds the point. He turns toward the pews. And Judge, if we're candid, Ms. Morgan has chosen a drifting lifestyle. Odd jobs. No real. Counsel, the judge says without heat. Address the court. Dad doesn't wait. He leans in and says it like a diner story to the cook. She wasted her life, never held a real job. It lands. The judge takes off his glasses and sets them on the bench like something that needs both hands. He rubs the bridge of his nose, once then looks straight at my father. Sir, he says calm and clipped, your daughter was a SEAL operative for 12 years. The sound that follows is 4 benches of air changing shape. Aunt Luann's purse thumps. Kyle goes still. Dalton's pen makes a dark dot where it stopped mid-note. The judge keeps his eyes on Dad. This court has reviewed in camera a verification from Naval Special Warfare Command, sealed pursuant to statute, he says. The contents are not for public dissemination. The fact of verification is for purposes of this proceeding only. Dalton recovers. Even if that were so, Your Honor, and we have not seen the document, the issue remains whether Ms. Morgan contributed financially. Janine stands. Exhibit 4 reflects DFAS allotments posted directly to the mortgage servicer during the relevant years. The amounts match the note. There is also a contemporaneous note in the decedent's hand acknowledging those contributions and asking that Mr. Morgan not be told to avoid upsetting him. We offer the note for intent. The judge nods. Understood. Dad searches for a foothold that isn't there. I kept the lights on. I fixed the faucet. Mr. Morgan, the judge, says still even, you will have a chance to testify at the evidentiary hearing. Today, we are on motions. He turns back to the file. The motion to expedite is denied. The status quo will be maintained. There will be no listing transfer or removal of fixtures pending final order. Counsel will confer on dates. Clerk will reserve a half day. Dalton opens his mouth. The judge lifts a palm, not unkind. And before anyone asks, he says, this is not a punishment. It is housekeeping. We are not going to scramble eggs we may need to unscramble. A small ripple of relieved air rises and fades. The judge replaces his glasses. Ms. Morgan, he says, eyes on me. For the first time, your counsel has proffered a purpose connected to your mother's memorial preferences. Outside today's scope. If you wish to present that later, you may. Yes, sir, I say. My voice is steady, not proud. In my chest, something unclenches that has been a fist for years. The lawn, Dalton starts. The lawn will survive a month, the judge says. He signs 2 orders and hands them to the clerk. We are done with this portion. Counsel will meet with my clerk. Mr. Morgan, you will not use this courtroom as a venue for commentary on your daughter's employment history. I trust I won't repeat that. Dad stares at the wood grain. Kyle nudges his elbow. We stand. The benches creak. People make a show of not looking at me. The bailiff calls the next case, and the machinery of other lives starts up again. I gather my folder. My knees feel like mine. In the corridor, the portraits watch from the walls. Janine exhales. That was the heavy lift, she says. Now we make the record. How much talking do I have to do, I ask. Less than you think, she says. We'll let the paper speak and fill the gaps with 3 sentences. Aunt Luann finds me by the county seal window. Her hands flutter, then tuck under her purse strap. Beck, she says, quiet. Fair winds. It takes a second. I nod once, and following sees. Cal Whitaker in his pressed VFW shirt catches it and gives a look that says, enough. Dad comes out last. He doesn't speak to me. For the first time in a long time, that feels right. On the steps afternoon, light warms the brick. The flag hangs lazy. Janine trades dates with the clerk. I watch Main Street go on bus breaks, a smoker by the planter, someone laughing into a phone. The decision isn't final, but a door that was stuck for years just opened and did not squeal. I don't need to say a word to feel the room still echoing what was said there. Sometimes the quiet is the part that lasts. I didn't go home right away. After court, I walked past Bunker Hill Diner and stood by the planter where the petunias give up every August. People didn't stare. They adjusted. When a story changes in a small town, folks tilt the picture frame and keep eating meatloaf. Inside the grill, man scraped bacon off the flat top. I took a counter stool. Coffee came in a chipped mug that fit my hand like a tool. Blue plate, the waitress asked, not writing. I nodded. 2 men in ball caps tried to whisper behind me. 12 years, one said. Figured she was between gigs. The other stirred creamer. Between gigs and keeping folks breathing ain't the same thing. Cal Whitaker came in slow. He stopped beside me and didn't touch my shoulder. Fair winds, he said. And following C's, I answered. That was enough. I tipped in ones and quarters and stepped into the heat. A teenager in a Letterman jacket held the door too long and said, "Ma'am." It wasn't a parade. It was a town-making room. At the credit union, Janine met me in a glass office. The manager, Marjorie, wore a cardigan with acorn buttons. We opened an account titled Elaine Morgan Choir Scholarship. I made the first deposit while Janine drafted language to accept memorial gifts without tangling the estate. Marjorie printed routing numbers with a treble clef. My granddaughter still talks about your mama teaching her alto, she said. She'd be proud. Thank you, I said. Main Street carried on in a lower key. At Food Lion, the cashier with the nose stud asked roundup and added soft, and thanks. I rounded up and dropped the good dog food in the shelter bin. On the VFW lawn, plastic chairs scraped concrete. Cal lifted 2 fingers. I lifted 2 back. At Morgan Heating and Air, Dad had the bay door up like a stage. Kyle parked too close to the shop sink and made a show of correcting it, forward, back, forward. I crossed to the hardware store for weed barrier and came out in time to hear Kyle low and urgent, "Optics, Dad. We don't need this becoming whatever this is." Dad's voice carried anyway. A man ought to say what a man thinks. Kyle rubbed his forehead. Just not into microphones. They saw me without waving. Dad lifted his chin and turned to the shop guys, making his hands big in the air. If his life were a radio, he'd have 2 settings off and loud. I wondered what the middle would sound like. That evening, church practice ran long. Aunt Luann fussed at the copier and sent me home with baked spaghetti and 2 hymnals the library was retiring. "Take them," she said. "I can't keep every book that smells like your mother." The sanctuary lights clicked off row by row, like a hand smoothing a bed. Back at the duplex, Mrs. Dottie sat on her porch in a faded housecoat. The chair I fixed held her like a good hand. "Saw you on the steps," she said. "You stood pretty." I thanked her and said I'd mend her porch screen this weekend. "Honey, you don't have to fix everything," she said. "Some things we let be." I looked at the loose corner of screen like a hem needing one more stitch. "This one I can fix," I said. Sleep came with the penny smell of late summer. I dreamed a motel door latch clicked and didn't open. I woke steady. Prepared is a kind of mercy you can give yourself. 2 days after court, Janine and I calendared dates with the clerk. Dalton stood nearby saying lawn like it was a wounded relative. The clerk penciled, penned, stamped. "Half day 2 weeks out," she said. Before then, Janine told me on the steps we'll need statements from the church treasurer and the mortgage servicer. If Cal will sign a short affidavit about your mother's wishes, as heard at the VFW picnic, it helps. "I won't put him on the spot," I said. "He'll tell me no if he means no," she said. "Men like that still carry a pen." Cal agreed before I finished asking. "No details," he said. "Just that I heard Elaine say the house stays till the choir fund launches." He tapped the courthouse steps with his cane. "Truth doesn't need volume. It needs a place to stand." At the hardware store, I bought a small brass mailbox for Mom's house and a can of satin black because the old box limped on one hinge. I sanded, primed, painted. Not because the judge cared, but because mail deserves a dignified place to land. I printed labels for scholarship envelopes and taped one to my refrigerator. The quiet rearranged itself and stopped rattling. Saturday, the choir sang at a wedding. I took the back row. The bride's uncle cried at the wrong parts, and a cousin almost knocked the unity candle over. After the recessional, the organist played "I'll Fly Away." In the vestibule, Luann pressed a folded check into my hand. "For the scholarship," she said. "From a friend who won't say who." I didn't ask. By Monday, someone had scrubbed graffiti off the courthouse stall. A flyer went up for a yard sale to help a kid with travel baseball. Bedford heals in increments. At Morgan Heating and Air, the bay door was down when I passed. The closed sign hung crooked, turned, with more feeling than needed. I kept walking. Some storms you let wear themselves out. Some you face with a folder and a steady voice. Some you ignore until they remember they aren't the weather. I had places to be and paper to move. The next part wouldn't be loud. It would be public. That's different. You can stand on steps without showing off. You can say one sentence and let a town decide who it wants to be when it hears it. And if there was a crack under everything, anger, grief, the long ache of being misnamed, I knew where to put it. Into the scholarship fund, into a polished mailbox, into a porch screen that won't scratch a lady's ankles when she opens her door to the morning. Noon comes with cicadas and the smell of fried chicken from the Rotary tent. Janine and I take the front pew while the clerk brings a ribboned folder to the bench. The judge looks the same as any day, no extra solemn, but the air has that storm weight. On Mr. Morgan's motion to expedite and related matters, he says the court issues the following. Paper slides. Based on documentary evidence, including DFAS allotment records and a contemporaneous note in the decedent's hand, and based on in-camera review of sealed verification, title shall remain with Ms. Morgan pending final probate disposition. The property shall not be listed, transferred, or encumbered without further order. An evidentiary hearing is set as scheduled. He signs twice and nods to the clerk. Copies may be picked up after recording. He looks over his glasses. We will not be taking statements inside the courtroom. His eyes find Dad. We are done. Outside, the steps have turned into a landing strip for opinions. Church ladies in linen, VFW shirts creased sharp too, Bedford bulletin reporters with spiral notebooks. The county clerk, Ms. Deering, stands by a folding table with a ribboned folder and a stack of blue-backed copies. We'll read a short summary and let folks get on with their day, she says. Janine stands beside me, not behind. Ms. Deering reads plain as a grocery list. Motion to expedite denied. Title remains with Ms. Morgan. No sale or transfer pending order. Court acknowledges private verification it will not publish. Parties to return on the date stated. Heads tilt in unison. My shoulders loosen. I step to a microphone taped to a wooden stand. My mother, Elaine Morgan, wanted her house to shelter music a little longer, I say. Today we open the Elaine Morgan Choir Scholarship at the Credit Union on Main. The first award this fall will help a Bedford kid study music at community college. Applications are at the church office. Cal Whitaker lifts 2 fingers. Permission for a word. Ms. Deering nods. Cal faces the street. Some of you knew Elaine. She filled the middle of a chord so other folks could sing the pretty line. That is work. He turns to me, then brings his hand to his brow. Formal salute, no flourish. On the VFW lawn, palms go crisp to foreheads. The clap that follows isn't loud. It's complete. Church ladies clap from their elbows. Teenagers in Letterman jackets clap like they forgot they were holding phones. Janine watches. Dad pushes forward, hands spread for a microphone that isn't his. I have something to say, he announces. The judge just outside the side door without his robe angles his head. Mr. Morgan, he says, do not turn these steps into motions practice. This is not a venue for commentary. Don't put me in a position to discuss contempt. The word contempt lands like a tool on a bench. Dad's hands curl and fall. Kyle steers him 1 step back. I hold up a single sheet, the scholarship, not the sealed letter. If you want to give in my mother's memory, the credit union will accept checks, I say. But mostly, what she wanted was people to show up on Wednesdays and sing. Laughter leaks in at the edges. Cameras click like cicadas hum. Constant, not unfriendly. The bulletin reporter asks, spell your first name. I do. Will you live in the house? For now, I say, and I'll keep the porch light working. In Bedford, a working porch light is a theology. Ms. Deering hands Janine a stamped copy and a deed book receipt with an instrument number in the corner. The paper is warm from the copier. Janine passes it to me like a fragile plate. I don't read the language. I feel the weight. Aunt Luann edges through the crowd, eyes glassy. Your mama would have made you eat a sandwich, she whispers. She presses butterscotch into my palm. Statement. The younger reporter asks Dad. He starts, then looks at the judge and thinks better. No comment. Kyle says quick as a seatbelt click. People peel away in ones and twos. The flag stirs once. Cal touches the railing as he goes steady on his cane. Janine bumps my shoulder. I'll have the servicer send a final ledger so we can tie a bow on it, she says. And we'll make your affidavit short and boring. Short and boring saved my life a few times, I say. At the edge of the crowd, a girl in a thrift store dress, Marissa Dean from Choir Camp Brochures, hovers with her mother. Is it okay to pick up an application, the mom asks. It's more than okay, I say. I hand over two and a pen. Marissa says, my teacher moved me from soprano to alto last spring. It felt like a demotion. It's not, I tell her. It's the backbone. Somebody has to hold the middle so the melody can do what it does. She nods. By the time we break down the table, the sun has moved past the courthouse face and left the steps in relief. My dress sticks to the backs of my knees. The order flaps once, then settles. Janine tucks the envelope into my folder and presses the flap flat. Done for today, she says. We walk to the curb. Dad stands by his van, not getting in. He could come over. He doesn't. At the bottom step, I look back at the door, where we've all been coming and going for a century. Wills, fines, marriages, mistakes. The brick holds all of it without commentary. I put the recorded order in my folder behind the scholarship sheet so the two carry each other. A breeze lifts the smell of boxwood and hot paper. I can breathe all the way to the floor of my lungs. Prepared isn't the same as brave, but it's the right cousin to walk home with. The recorded order sat on my kitchen table with the scholarship flyer on top, the two sheets facing each other like a handshake. I made a sandwich I could eat standing up and rinse the plate before the breadcrumbs thought about sticking. The porch swing squeaked once when I sat, then remembered the rhythm it's always had. Heat broke a little after sundown. I could hear a mower 3 streets over and the ice machine at the gas station cough. Headlights washed across the peony's leaves and went dark. Dad came up the steps holding an old coffee can with a paint splatter lid. He didn't ask to come in. He set the can on the rail like he was paying a bill. These were your granddad's first, he said, not quite meeting my eye. When I pried the lid, the metal smell lifted up a tangle of Vietnam Service Ribbons campaign bars. 2 pins I recognized from pictures, one I didn't. The colors looked brighter than anything from a garage shelf ought to look. I kept him in the tool cabinet, he said. Your mama wouldn't let me hang them in the living room. Said we'd do it proper when the walls were fresh. He swallowed. Walls are still not fresh. I turned the coffee can lid in my hands and kept my voice easy. You want coffee? It was 9:30. I shouldn't, he said. Gives me the leg shakes. He shifted his weight. You need anything fixed? Screen on Dottie's porch, I said. Already on my list. He nodded like I'd explained a map. We listened to a dog bark in a yard that isn't careful about leashes. Finally, he said, about court. I ran my mouth. I got carried away. He rubbed the back of his neck. You know how I am. I do, I said. You don't have to brag on me. You just can't lie about me. I let the words sit there between us like a level on a board. He looked at the coffee can. That seems fair, he said. He slid a thumb across one ribbon and put it back like you return a hymn book to the right slot. You keeping the house? He asked. For now, I said. I'll keep the porch light working. He nodded at the light, which was doing its job without nagging anyone. Your mama liked a working light. He took the can back and headed down the steps, then stopped at the sidewalk. Tell Luann I said the spaghetti was too sweet, he called, which is his sideways way of saying he ate it all. I will, I said. He lifted his hand, but didn't wave. The truck door thunked exactly once. The next afternoon, I drove to the cemetery with a small envelope from the credit union and the butterscotch Aunt Luann pressed into my palm on the courthouse steps. A storm had walked through and left the grass perked up and the air wrung out. Mom's headstone is plain name, dates a line of music notes Luann chose because she said words would start fights. I brushed off the dry grass and tucked the scholarship flyer under a little stone so it wouldn't go anywhere. First deposit's in, I told her. The church ladies are already arguing about whether the application should be 1 page or 2. A dragonfly droned past. Somewhere behind me, wind chimes someone shouldn't have hung on a cedar, rang 3 notes and gave up. I sat until the granite warmed my palm, and I could hear the cars on Independence like a tide the town has learned not to name. I'm not mad, I said, because that was true. And then right after it, another truth, I was tired of being misnamed. I laid the butterscotch on the grass even though the ants would win. A girl named Marissa took 2 applications, I said. Alto. Thinks that's a demotion. I told her it isn't. On my way home, I swung past the VFW. Cal sat in a plastic chair like a man waiting with time. He lifted 2 fingers. I lifted 2 back. Inside the post window, someone had taped a note. Alto Fund, put a 10 if you can in Sharpie on lined paper. Men who sign checks without ceremony have kept more towns alive than anyone will tally. At the duplex, Dottie's screen needed 1 more stitch where the corner sagged. I fixed it with the last inch of spline and a butter knife because my roller lives in a box I can't find. When I finished, she patted the frame and said, "Don't stand there waiting for praise. Go on home." I laughed and did. Night came with crickets answering each other like they were playing hot potato with the same question. I pulled the shallow drawer, put the recorded order behind the trident letter, and slid the scholarship deposit slip on top. There's a click I like when the wood seats itself. Some nights I used to sleep with a shoe under the bed facing the door so I'd hear it move. Now I leave the shoes where they live. Prepared and brave take turns. You don't have to be both on the same night. Kyle texted the next morning, "Dad's being dad. Proud of you. Don't use that against me." I wrote back, "I won't. Fix the sink at the shop before frost." He sent a thumbs up and a photo of a wrench the size of a toddler. That's our language. Church Sunday felt the same except for the way people found my eye and then looked away as if a note too high had slid back onto the staff where it belonged. Luann printed scholarship envelopes and made me take back the cash I tried to leave in the kitchen jar. "You'll insult me if you don't cash this," she said. "Consider it back pay for risers, lugging, and bulletin folding." We argued about nothing until the coffee perked. I waited a week for the dust to decide whether it would settle or hang. It mostly settled. The Bedford Bulletin ran a small story above the fold, no color photo headline, short as a prayer court maintains title. Scholarship announced. That's about the right size. People handed me small checks with commas and ones without. I folded both into the same envelope. Someone left a roll of quarters with a rubber band around it. I liked that one best. On a Tuesday that didn't have any other name, Dad came by with a bag of porch screws. "If you want that swing to stop squeaking, you can give it a shim," he said. He didn't reach for it. He held up the bag. "You want me to?" he asked. "I can," I said, "but if you want to go ahead." He sat on the steps and sorted screws into lines like a boy making an army. He worked quiet. When the swing settled into new holes and didn't complain, he dusted his hands on his jeans and stood. "You were gone a lot." He said, not a question. I said. "I don't need details," he said. "I understand details get people hurt." He looked at the porch light without seeing it. "I won't say that thing again," he added. He didn't say which thing. He didn't have to. "Thanks," I said. "Boundaries simple. No lying about me." He nodded once like a man signing a receipt he read twice. He touched the post on his way down. Men like him say sorry where their hands land. That night, the swing didn't squeak. The air smelled like cut grass and summer trying to hold on. I read the bulletin and put it in the drawer with the trident letter and the order and the deposit slip. I made a note to stop by the credit union for more applications and to pick up sheet protectors so the first batch doesn't curl. I wrote porch bulb 40W on an index card. You can live a whole life on notes like that and do more good than folks who need a brass band to remind them they're good. If you stayed with me this far, you already know the moral doesn't wear a sash. Silence is not failure. Some work you can't post, and some love you shouldn't have to prove on demand. Truth doesn't always shout. Most days, it stands up in daylight and holds the door. If this story touched something you've been carrying, maybe a quiet job, a boundary that took you years to name, or a person who held the middle so others could sing, share it with them. Leave your porch light on tonight. And if you want more plain-spoken stories that land soft and true, you're welcome to subscribe and sit with us for the next one. We keep the coffee hot.